So there's a story that Richard was at the cabin a few weeks ago, our family cabin, and he was using a chainsaw to cut down trees. Were you cutting down trees or you were chopping wood?
No, there was some cedar sections left over downstairs, and I was just cutting them in half so that I could
Okay.
split them into kindling.
Yeah. But you were using a power tool, right?
I love it. Just a nice little steel, gas powered chainsaw. Yeah.
Yes. Now, it could be terrifying, but it can also be very efficient. But let's get one thing straight. If you don't know how to use a power tool, it's very dangerous for yourself and those around you.
We've all seen the different horror shows and stuff like that. So that chainsaw is a very scary tool. But in
Yes.
the right hands, with the right measures and the right safety precautions, it's an awesome tool.
And how we're going to tie this to this episode is we're going to be talking about debt and credit and how these things are financial power tools and they can do great things, but they can also do horrible things. Um, I think in society right now, we do a poor job of distinguishing between good debt and bad debt. And we're lucky enough to be joined by Alex from Thrive Mortgage. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you do?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, before I get into it, when you started off with like a note about Richard picking up a chainsaw and just the way he explained it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, did he come to the office with one less finger or missing a foot this week? I was a little bit nervous about that and where it was going, but
Okay.
then I thought, he's smiling too much right now. He'd probably be in a
Yeah.
little bit more pain. So I'm glad, Richard, that you were able to operate the chainsaw and not lose a limb. That's a good
Thank you.
sign. Great start to the week. Thanks again, Matt. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, my name is Alex McFadden, and I'm one of the partners, one of three partners, the three-headed machine that we call Thrive Mortgage Co. We operate a mortgage finance and real estate, well, just a mortgage company, but our focus is on creating wealth through real estate, so using debt as a tool as opposed to, what many look at as a bad thing or something that's a negative consideration. So we are trying our best to help people understand how to use the mortgage to work for them and not against them. Backstory on our company: we've been around and operational since 2019, although our partners have all been in the industry for nearly 10 years at this point. Myself, more than 10, and we've helped in the last few years. We're really, really grateful to have helped almost 3,000 families in the last since we've launched. And are currently, if it matters to anyone, listed as the number 2 team in the country. So very excited about that.
Wow, congratulations for that. Now, I think we're talking about bad debt and good debt. In your mind, what is a bad debt and what is a good debt?
Well, I think at the end of the day, bad is something that's not working for you, and good is something that's working for you. I don't think we
Mhm.
have to overcomplicate it from that perspective. And when we talk about working for us, is it something that's helping us create long-term value, either in the form of assets that return us money or income, or something that could be, turned into an asset that could turn us money? So again, that's just
Mhm.
one step further from that perspective. I think we often overcomplicate things and we over explain them, but sometimes it's as simple as, is it working for you or is it working against you? And that's easily defined. Is this putting money back in my pocket either today or in the future, or can I leverage against this in order to do so? Or is it an expense that's coming out every month that doesn't have any, continued value or appreciating value, meaning value that's going up as time goes
Mhm.
on? I think one thing I've learned in doing this for a number of years is that we're never really taught about the value of debt and good debt as we go through, well, school, university, walk into a bank. They don't explain or articulate what that is for you. We just always think a mortgage is bad, and we always think all debt is bad. And as you guys know from a variety of different tools that can assist you with their life insurance or other strategies that maybe are a bit deep for this podcast, there are so many ways to use debt to help you. It's not a bad thing. And in fact, I don't know statistics on this, so I won't go and quote them, but some of the most successful business owners that you find out there in the world don't necessarily have all their money in cash. They have their money in assets, and they're heavily leveraged. They're typically looking for a asset that they can leverage against and looking to
Mhm.
borrow more against that, as opposed to having cash sitting in the bank.
Yeah, that's a perfect explanation. I'm just going to give Richard a chance here because he loves this concept called a cash cow and a cash pig and a cash jackpot. And I think that's a good way to explain debt too. Richard, do you want to go into it?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've got a choice of putting things into three different things, and that is a cash cow. Okay, I say, feed the cow, right? Because it produces milk, and ultimately, end of life, there's meat and stuff. But that's a productive use of our energy, is feeding the cow. So when we think of putting things into cash cows, things that actually make money for us. And then there's pigs, which is just expensive. Expenses, all they do is eat stuff up, and they don't really produce anything. Maybe some meat at the end, but in the case of cash pigs, it's things that just consume our cash and don't really provide anything useful. And then there's jackpots, and jackpots is we put something in and we're just betting, and the odds are high. We're betting that we might get something out, and we're just feeling lucky. That's not a strategy. Feeling lucky is not a strategy. So I think in terms of leveraging assets, in terms of debt, I would say that the cash pig is high interest debt, credit card debt. It's definitely toxic, and you don't want to do anything about with that. The jackpot, well, okay, well, that's pretty high stakes there. Maybe loan sharks. I don't know. But creative use of debt and good debt, a secured mortgage, a secured home equity line of credit that you can use and lever to buy a house that gives you utility that you can live in, or a rental property, or a vacation property for your family's enjoyment. And the interest on that, because it's secured by a very solid asset, is relatively low. Does that kind of answer your question?
That's perfect. And I think which book was the cash cow, pig, and jackpot from again? Just to clarify and give credit.
Jack Traher, Cash Cows, Pigs, and Jackpots.
Okay. Yeah. So if this honestly, this conversation, we're talking all about leverage, which is basically borrowing money for an investment, expecting the profits made to be greater than the interest that you're paying. Now, Alex, how do you feel about leverage?
Oh, that's a very broad question.
Yep.
How do I feel about leverage? Well, I mean, personal feelings from a perspective of leverage. I mean, defining it, leverage is to use an asset to borrow against. So I guess the question becomes, when we're using something to leverage against it, so take money out against, in this case, real estate, what is the purpose of doing so? And what are we doing with it? So, I mean, that comes back to like, why am I doing it? And how does it help me? And as you guys know, that you can use real estate in this case, we'll talk about a mortgage or a line of credit as the two most common products. We can talk about other products afterwards, but for the sake of the conversation, it's typically there's a number of different ways to look at it. Number one, are we leveraging, quote unquote, are we borrowing money, to make it simple here, against our existing real estate in order to buy another asset that, of course, will grow in value or provide us with a cash return? So that's a rental property or something of that nature. There's other types of properties, but something that obviously earns income. Are we leverage against our property in order to reduce our overall interest expenses? So reduce our total cost. Again, right now, that's something that we're seeing commonly, where perhaps people have in the last year taken on a variety of different debts and perhaps found themselves a little bit over their head. So are we looking at helping ourselves from that perspective, or are we just simply borrowing money and leveraging an asset to buy, a fancy car or something that's perhaps not helping us or serving our goals? And then again, I'm not going to, suggest to put someone down who's using their HELOC or home equity line of credit to buy a vehicle. Maybe it makes sense for their family. I've had families where it's, they haven't had a car in 7 years, and this actually makes sense for them because it helps them more than, taking money from dealership, and it's well thought out, right? However, I guess the question mark is really, what are you using the property to leverage gains? Like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great insight. Now, the first instance you gave was it's called consolidation, debt consolidation, and it's a useful tool for a lot of people. I think especially in this world where, as you mentioned, we're not being taught about how to handle credit or debt properly. I think one of the worst things is giving somebody a credit card who has no idea anything about spending and just letting them go, because hey, by all means, that's my money. And people don't actually know the cost associated with credit cards and improper use of credit and debt. So that's a great example there that you gave.
I think
Thank
it's useful to pause a little bit here. When we're looking at, we're talking about consolidation of loans, we're talking about people potentially sometimes getting in over their heads on things. And I think sometimes we need to pause and allow people the grace to say, there's no shame really in this. Like, actually be proud that you've gone through life making decisions. There might have been a couple of bad decisions on things. Don't worry about it. Like, just take a look at it. And if a situation calls for consolidation type of a loan, i.e., using a home equity line of credit, maybe redoing the mortgage on your house because you've got a lot of credit card debt, there's no shame in that. That was just the result of some mistakes. We all make mistakes. Don't worry about it. Let's talk to a professional like Alex and straighten things out. And you're going to be on a really, really solid track afterwards. But I think it's really important to emphasize, shame often holds people back from making progress. No, you're just telling the truth. Truth is the beginning of progress. So I think it's really important to give people some slack here and say, hey, there's a way out here. Like, there's a plan. There's a plan for everything, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
think you go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
so that makes me think a lot about a different type of borrower and a different type of situation, but I think it's worthwhile to bring up right now. Due to the nature of being a creative, financially focused mortgage professional and a broker, we get the ability to use a variety of different products that perhaps one bank doesn't have, but we also see it from a different angle because I guess at the end of the day, we're incentivized to make sure the families are taken care of and they have a solution. One of those camps is self-employed borrowers. So we're speaking of people who that perhaps may feel a little bit slighted or unsure or bad about taking on debt. Well, here's a different angle that we should talk about. Self-employed borrowers often walk into a bank and perhaps they've had a lot of success over a 2-year period. They've just recently launched their business, or maybe they've been doing it for 10 years, and they usually walk away dissatisfied, upset, or confused as to why they can't qualify for the amount that they're hoping for, and or have to wait another 1, 2, 3, 4 years before they can enter the housing market or refinance or whatever their objective goals are. And so what happens often with those people is that they give up right then and there. They walk away and say, I can't get a mortgage, because they don't know that there's another outlet. So circling back to those folks that you're talking about who are in a situation where they are carrying, let's say $1,500 of car payments, plus they have, 15, 20, 30,000, or maybe a little less, but some amount of unsecured debt because COVID hit really hard. The cost of everything went up really quickly and life happened, and they wanted to get back out and enjoy it for a minute, but then realized, oh my goodness, wow, this really hit fast. And I can say we were all in the last couple of years surprised by how quickly life has changed. And I don't blame anyone for not being able to adapt their personal budget in time. Like, it went from the point in 2019, we go out for lunch and it would be, let's say $15 a meal. You walk back in 2021 and it's, $25, $35 for that exact same meal. That adds up really quickly, not to mention, obviously gas and life. And if you have kids, you throw it all into the tank and it's, wow, it hits fast. So nobody should ever feel bad about that. What the goal though is for someone never to feel bad about that, but to help them understand that there is an option for them. And if they own real estate right now, wow, you have the best opportunity available to you, which is to reset and then put in a couple of good habits and at least understand where your home can help you. You made an absolutely amazing decision to own real estate. Now let's let it help you. Sorry to go on a tangent here, but I had a phone call this morning already, Matt, and our team's going to help out a lady. She's owned the same property for about 15 years. We got introduced by a real estate agent partner of ours. She's owned this property for about 15 years. Her husband passed away about 5 years ago. And she's found herself now, having retired a few years ago, just in a place where she got behind on taxes. And COVID was very hard because she not only was on one pension, she didn't have a second pension, but in addition to that, just having herself, she had another business, and that basically got cut off at the feet. The money that was the handout from the government was enough to keep up for her. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, she got overwhelmed. So now she's in a position where she said to him, hey, and I can say his first name, Nick, I think I'm going to lose my house. I need to sell it. Can you come over and help me out? He says, I think there's other options for you. Have you talked to the bank? And she said, yes. The bank said, I can't do anything. I've got no
Mhm.
options, nothing I can do. And so, fast forward, we spoke to her. We can help her. There are options for her. And she's over the moon. Like in the first phone call, over extremely emotional. Family home. She wanted to live here another 5 years at least. And we can help her make that happen. And so I think what's important here in all this, Matt, is, and Richard for that matter, is that your home can be a good asset to help you eliminate bad debt to put you in a better situation. She's not doing this every year,
Yeah.
but this is going to help her stay there and enjoy her life for another 5 years in that position.
That's
And that's a
fantastic.
powerful example. That's such a powerful example because I know in all the content you produce that you are very adamant about it depends on your plan and your personal circumstance. For this lady, one of her big values was staying in that house for 5 years, and no one can tell her otherwise, right? It's as logical as we are about things, we can't override our emotions sometimes. Like that's a core value of hers. So that's an incredible story to hear. But I think this is a good transition because we've talked about this many times. In most cases, people don't understand credit or debt, and when we don't understand something, of course, our natural tendency is to be fearful, and especially we hear those bad case scenarios of debt, right? Like I just think about the human experience and how we're wired for negativity and we're wired to latch onto those things just because of all of our biases and everything. But what are some examples of debt being used wrong? We alluded to a few of them, but what are some specific examples?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you do need to have specific examples, but I mean, one would be very simple for me. Let's just say someone taking on debt in order to, and if we're talking about our mortgages here, to be more clear, so in
Mhm.
this case, for refinance or taking it out, again, it's difficult for me to say what's right or wrong, but for the sake of conversation, what might not be useful or helpful is to continuously access this equity in your home to do something that isn't putting you in a better financial position or helping you or your family. I have people that I've refinanced 4 years in a row, and it just unfortunately comes down to habits. They're trying to live a lifestyle that's above their means.
Yeah.
Truth be told, it's not my job or responsibility to make them do that, and nor will I ever. But I can make suggestions around how they can help themselves out. My concern would be that we've seen a run of property values increasing for 3 straight years, and now recently seen a little bit of decline. You can't continue to do that forever because either A, you won't qualify, or B, you won't have the equity in your home, which means the value of the home wouldn't have increased enough to be able to do that. So I think if you're looking at taking equity out of your home to quote unquote keep up, then is something to consider. Perhaps maybe you should look at your financial situation and question whether or not it makes sense to use the equity for those things. What examples? I mean, it's really tough to say because it depends on what values someone
Yeah.
has, right? Who is it for me to tell someone not to take out equity if you're having a family vacation? If you're doing that every single year over and over and over again and having a lavish vacation with a lifestyle you just can't match, then maybe it's time to reconsider doing that. But I've had clients where they did do an equity takeout and they wanted to take their family for a once in a lifetime vacation that they've wanted to do for the last 15 years.
Hmm.
Right? Should we say no, you can't do that when in reality the monthly payments are there and they still have, let's say, 50% equity in their home? I'm not going to tell them that's a terrible idea or anything to do that because that's a memory and an experience that you're never going to get back. I think realistically, it just comes down to someone who's perhaps doing it unnecessarily or repeatedly
Yeah.
and not picking up on the drawbacks. We do
Hmm.
certainly have conversations with our clients who are doing this on a regular matter to talk about, hey, what are some other ways to do this? Have you considered some saving strategies? Have you considered some alternative solutions? What if we helped you purchase an asset that could help you have vacations in the next 5 to 10 years? What would that look like for you as opposed to you dipping into your home? I own real estate as a rental. Okay. So I have rentals and I own a portfolio of real estates. Now, certainly in the last couple of years, we've benefited from the asset value growing. And I've utilized this. So if we're talking about debt, I've utilized this debt to help me acquire more real estate properties. And my intention isn't to make $5,000 a month right now, but within 10 years, I would like to have $10,000 a month. And
Mhm.
those can pay for my vacations. That can pay for my boat gas, which is probably going to cost me $2,000 a month, right? So at that point, long way around, basically suggesting we need to look at ways to use the debt to pay us,
Mhm.
right? Once we've cleared up the ugly stuff, let's get out of there. Let's get rid of the ugly stuff, so to speak. Get you feeling good, get you feeling better, and then look at opportunities to help it serve us.
It's
Okay.
easy to see the mortgage, especially a home equity line of credit, as an ATM, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. My general feedback on that is that I would suggest that most of our clients, when we have a good conversation, we talk to them about debt reduction strategies outside of that. And we talk to them about, okay, what can we do to prepare you for next time? Richard and Matt, we don't continuously see a lot of people doing that over and over again. They're aware. They want to put
Yeah.
themselves in a better situation. They don't want to have to dip into their credit unless life happened or something occurred. But what it is I think more than anything else is just the tools, the knowledge, and the experience so that they're not relying on that, but putting themselves in a better situation.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice transition into we've mentioned this several times that financial literacy is not being taught. And it's such a powerful thing when used properly. And many of those tools, so credit and mortgages and stuff, really aren't addressed until it's potentially too late. Now, I love the content that you guys do because you really seek to educate people. What role has the education played in the experience of your clients?
Well, I think there's a few different factors. So what you see is we do a lot of obviously public educational content, and that's either YouTube, our podcast, on Instagram, on Facebook, on emails, and we also have educational courses, right? So what role does it play? First of all, we want people to know that our objective is not to sell anyone on anything. Our objective is to show them their options, educate them on how they can work for them so they can make the best decision with the guidance of us to support that decision. There's a lot of different places to get a mortgage. There's a lot of different places to get advice. We're very clear that our goal is to make sure that you're making the best decision based on these parameters available to you and this information that's available to you. Here you go, right?
Hmm.
And we find that a lot of our clients feel much more comfortable with that, knowing that we're not just providing information just based on poof out of the air, right? We're not just saying, hey, go with this product or go with the solution or do this and it just makes sense, right? We're
Yeah.
showing and providing proof. And I think what role does this play? I mean, two things. Number one, it certainly feels a lot better to actually see something and visualize what we're explaining, right? So it feels better to know that. And number two, it even feels even better to know that historically speaking, these strategies that we're looking at have worked, and here's the proof of doing so. I
Yeah.
guess as a bonus, it probably helps that we know what we're talking about and we're constantly learning, so we can educate people like you are right now.
Yeah. That's thank you for that. And I think one key thing that I picked up there is the role of independence. So you are working with your clients and are you're planning around their situation and their circumstance, but you're not forced into one product. You're not forced into one provider. You can actually choose the best option for the client by laying out all their options and giving them. I think this is very important, and this is why we do the things we do. It's educating people so that they can make the best informed decision. So, could you just briefly talk about your experience with independence as it comes to debt vehicles and why it's so important?
Yeah. So, and when you say debt vehicles, for the sake of the audience, we're talking about different mortgage products, solutions, home equity, line of credit, second mortgages,
Yeah.
and interest-only loans. I think to me, it wouldn't. If I'm looking at it from the outside looking in, which is obviously extremely difficult because of the nature of what I do, but if I am looking at for the best solution for my needs, why would I limit myself to only one particular brand, right? If I know for a fact that I want the best option available to me, but I don't know what that option is, why am I going to walk into one particular brand and essentially have them provide me with only what they have available to me? There's pros and cons to not being specialized. The difference in regards to why I think someone could look at an independent broker or independent financial planner is a few things. First and foremost, when you're walking into a independent financial broker or mortgage broker for that matter, sorry, if you're working with someone good, you're going to sense it right away. And you're going to notice that the questions that they're asking aren't related to the products that they're offering, but to your specific situation. Quite frequently, we are a second opinion. In fact, I would guess that 50% of the times we are a second opinion for someone because they've already been to a bank or a credit union or something of that nature. When we get off that first phone call, that first consultation call that we have, I get remarks on, I would say at least half the time, they say to us straight away, wow, no one has ever asked me these questions before. And the big reason for that is that we're not trying to fit them into one particular box. What we are trying to do is to understand their goals so that we can get them the information and provide them with the right solution for their needs. So that's one thing that I just being in this industry and doing this right now, it's you don't think about it all the time. But when a client consistently says that same thing to you, like, wow, no one's asked me these questions about me, you start to realize the power of not pushing someone into a box, right? And we were
Mhm.
talking about boats earlier today, right? It's not having one particular boat to ride in. Richard can go down to the dock and he can choose a fishing boat this day, and he can choose a sport boat this day, or we can choose a surf boat this day, right? So it's no different than mortgage products. The neat thing about that too, and there's some, when it comes to the mortgage industry, there's things that consumers do need to know. Not every mortgage broker has access to all the products. Not
Mhm.
every single bank offers broker-based products, right? There are some that have only their own sales force. But if you're working with someone good, you should be able to ask these questions up front. Who do you have access to? Why does that matter for me? And what does that even mean? I think the good ones will be able to articulate that, explain that to you, and it's almost irrelevant to which lender that we go with. It's just, okay, this one made the most sense based on your situation. But next time around, we might look over here. And there's a lot of benefit to having that ability.
Mm-hmm. And I think, thank you for that tangent. That was, I love how passionate you are about that. It was great. But let's get into some real practicals for people. What are some basic principles of debt, especially if people want to begin using mortgages and stuff like that?
What are some basic principles? Could you articulate maybe an example or a scenario? Because I could go over about 1,000 if you let me, and I don't want you to.
Oh, yeah, I know. What are the most common ones that you experience?
Well, are we referring to what someone can use to qualify for a loan or some suggestions that they could make?
Yes, let's go with that.
The qualifications.
The
Okay.
qualifications.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Let's get into the nitty gritty. So, the first thing that people need to know is that if you own real estate, if you own a property right now, how much can you actually leverage from your existing property is one thing that a lot of people get confused about. First, you have to be able to qualify, and there's a variety of different ways to qualify. But assuming you can qualify based on any of these different lenders, you can borrow up to a maximum of 80% of the current market value of your home. When I say current market value, that's really important because a lot of people look at their BC assessment if they're in BC. We have clients in different provinces, Alberta, Ontario, and other places across the country. But I would suggest that your audience is in BC and they're looking at their assessments and saying, "Hey, my property value is $599,000 or $595,000, so I can borrow 80% of that." And the answer to that is no, actually. It's based on the market value. What would it sell for or be rebuilt for in today's market? And this is confirmed by way of an independent appraisal. And another note on that is that the actual appraisal is confirmed after you're approved for a mortgage. So you typically get the mortgage first based on the assumption. There's a whole way that we get to that at a later time. But I will tell you
Mhm.
one thing, that the value of the home is often very different from what people think it is on the BC assessment. So the first thing that we always tell people is, hey, even if you haven't considered a refinance today, if you ever consider it, talk to us immediately so we can get a better idea as to what your value is. So let's
Mhm.
make an assumption that $599,000 home is actually worth, what did we say, 700,000 today. Let's say 700,000. I think that's a fair estimate based on some properties that we've seen. So if that's the case, and someone is looking to borrow 80% of the market value of that home for whatever purpose that their goals are, that's $560,000. If they owe $400,000 today, that means that person has access to up to $160,000 of money from their home. There's $160,000 that you can draw from your property. Now, they can do a variety of things. They can take that money and they can take their current mortgage. They can take the new money and they can turn it into a whole new loan. So, an absolutely new loan. You can amortize that over 30 years to reduce your payments or longer, depending on the lending situation. The second option people have is they can actually go ahead and add what's called a home equity line of credit, which is an extremely powerful tool if used correctly. This home equity line of credit is an interest only loan, which can be added to a mortgage or refinanced into a mortgage with a whole new loan. and it gives someone the ability to access that money, that $160,000, virtually any time, and only make interest-only payments, usually at 2 to 4% lower than the amount of money that they might have on an unsecured line of credit. The cool
Yeah.
thing is you can use a home equity line of credit for a variety of different strategies, whether it's tax reduction, buying real estate. Those can be one and the same. You can use it to consolidate debts if you want to. But there's so many tools available to you. And I think the biggest thing to take away here is the 80% rule. A lot of people don't catch that one.
Yeah. That's great information. Now, I think one thing that's important to know is your credit score. So much of being able to borrow anything relies on your credit score. And unfortunately, again, we're not being taught this stuff. So some people end up going into a situation where they're looking to get a loan or a mortgage or anything, and they don't qualify based on their credit score. Could you explain what the credit score is? Why is it important? And some tips for some people.
Oh man, you know what's interesting about that? I literally prepared a couple of videos to go out to my my Instagram audience and YouTube for the next 2 weeks based on specifically credit, and I've had a couple more pieces of content that are coming up there, Matt, because credit is and will continue to be even more important from a lending perspective going forward than it has been in Canada in the past. Canada, we typically follow the US by about 2 to 3 years, if not a little bit more on the lending side. Okay. In the US, credit has been a big, big, big play. And when I mean play, I mean it's been very important for the better part of the last 5 to 10 years. We're starting to see the lenders up in Canada really price, which means provide interest rates and terms based on someone's credit score in tighter increments than ever before. And it's not just the score. So we'll talk about, what some basics of credit in just a second here. We're seeing lenders actually deny loans more now than ever from conventional banks. So your typical banks for credit scores, which 2 years, 3 years ago, pre-COVID, basically, would have been allowed and accepted. Now, that's not to say someone couldn't qualify with poor credit because there is a bigger picture here. But what I am going to say is we're seeing it happen more and more frequently. Or the lenders say, you know what, we might only provide 100 instead of 160,000 because your credit score is on the lower range. But I think we should take a step back here. It's not just the credit score, Matt. What we're looking at here is the credit score, but also the credit utilization. So, for those who don't know, in Canada, we typically use Equifax. We also have TransUnion, but a majority of the lenders and banks use Equifax. Equifax has a credit score range of 300 to 900. If you're applying for a loan with less than 20% down, typically speaking, most lenders want to see a credit score above 680. There are exceptions to be had below that, 650. We've even seen as low as 600, but it has to really make sense. 3 years ago, a credit score of 620 would have been no problem. Okay, so we've seen them increasing the values. But they also now look at not just the score. Why is a score lower? Is it because missed payments occurred? If so, what kind of missed payments? Is it because they have a continuous balance of $4,900 on a $5,000 credit card over and over and over again? Is it because they carry 7 credit cards and 5 of them are being used every single month but not being paid in full, maybe 50%? There's so much more to it.
Yeah.
The short version is our suggestion for anybody looking to apply for a loan is don't be afraid of it and don't be afraid to reach out to someone like us because of the credit. However, it might surprise you at how important the credit score is. Some tips really quickly. If you're new to credit, we suggest folks continue trying or at least try their best to pay off their credit in full every month. If you put it on your credit, pay it off in full. We understand that's not the case for everyone. Not everyone can do that all the time. In fact, we know that's unlikely for most people to occur. But we suggest not utilizing, and there's different numbers here, 66%, 50%, 40%. It's subjective.
Yeah.
In our experience, if we keep that 50% margin as the primary number, I found it's better to be conservative. If we try not to hold more than 50% of the value, if you owe, let's say, for example, if your credit limit is $5,000, try to keep it at $2,500 or less as much as possible. Try to make sure you're not paying off just the interest. Okay. And there is a debate about how many different credit lines you should have open at any given time, but let's keep it short and sweet. the lenders like to see at least 2 revolving credit lines, which means perhaps 2 credit cards or 1 credit card and 1 line of credit. It could be a variety of combinations of that. And they will open their eyes if they see unnecessary credit sitting around, which is being either A, not utilized, or it is being utilized for that matter. If they see you have 8 credit cards, the question will be why? What does someone
Mhm.
need to have with, 8 $10,000 limit credit cards, $80,000? It could make a bank a little bit nervous, or an insurance agency, and say, that person at any time could go and take $80,000 worth of unsecured credit at 20% interest. Not too sure about that. And if you're on the
Mhm.
borderline of your actual score, that could determine the difference between how much money they can take out.
Alex, that's a really good point. A number of years ago, I just had this goal of improving the credit score as much as possible. And I took a look at all those different factors, things that you mentioned, and I realized that, whoa, we've got a bunch of like cards that are just idle and we're just not using. And one of them that we had totally forgotten about. So we purposely went and just canceled every single one that wasn't being used, just left the ones that we wanted to keep, and huge jump. Like within a month, the credit score changed massively. So great tip.
Mm. It's always the little things. And I'm always a little bit nervous to talk about credit too much because it is such a personal thing. And what I
Yeah.
find often happens is people will say, you know what, I don't want to get pre approved because you're going to pull my credit score, which there's a big fallacy around that. First of all, if you're going and looking up your credit on certain applications, typically the credit score isn't as accurate as what we're going to see, which is what a lender will look at. And the second thing is, as long as you're not going out and going to get pre-approved by multiple different banks or multiple different lenders, one perhaps maybe went to the bank or the second opinion or something of that nature, then it's not going to have such a detrimental impact to your credit score that we can't take notice to say, okay, well, we see that it went from 740 down to 732 because we took your credit score. The lender's not going to look at that and say that's the reason you're not getting a loan. So it is extremely important if you want to understand your financial situation, definitely to get a proper credit score done, but certainly do it with a team that you feel confident can actually look at your credit and explain it. When you walk into the bank, the only thing they'll say to you is your credit score is good or bad. That's all they're
Mhm.
going to say, not why is it good or why is it bad or what is on there or show me an explanation. It's good or bad. And that's not okay. There's just simply not enough to it. There's more to it. That's like walking to the doctor to say, "Hey, you're good." Good.
It it
Wrong.
honestly reminds me of the scene in Gladiator where they do the thumbs up or thumbs down.
Right.
That's all that came to mind right there.
Nice, nice. You're saying I look like the gladiator. I'll take it.
Sure. All right. Alex, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is one thing I'd like to touch on really quickly, which
Yeah.
is something that we just glossed over, which is the idea of using your property as a way to obviously earn income for you. Um, we obviously in the last 2 years, it's become sexy to talk about buying real estate as an investment, and the reason for that is because of property values increasing. So we've seen a lot of people get in the market, sell off a year later, make $100,000, $200,000. Like we're talking money that can change someone's life, right?
Mhm.
Um, that reminds me of Richard, one of his 3 cash components. I can't remember which one that was. It was not the pig, not the cow, the other one,
The
the jackal,
jackpot.
jackpot,
Jackpot.
jackpot. I
Yeah.
thought jackal we were talking animals. So that is what we call your jackpot. Okay, so we talk about debt as a ability to help you out, put you in a better situation, consolidate debt, to improve your credit, to a number of different things. But we haven't really gotten deep into considering debt as an opportunity. And when I talk debt, I talk about your mortgage as an opportunity to make money for you. We don't have enough time on the show today to talk about real estate investing as a whole. However, the mindset around most people is quite simply, I'm going to pay off my mortgage, live in my house, and that's it. Well, why?
Mhm.
Because what's going to happen is now you're going to have $1 million asset or $1.5 million asset that's literally doing nothing for you, zero. It's in fact going backwards in value. It's like putting money in the bank right now and letting it sit there, earn zero interest, which is going backwards at a 7.5% inflation rate. You're losing 7.5% year over year. So if you could borrow money against your asset at 3, 4, 5%, and you could put that into an income earning asset such as real estate.
Mhm.
If we think about the fact that we can borrow money today from our home, our $1 million home, that has no cost to it, and that cost is going to be, I mean, I guess I should put some numbers together. Let's say we borrow $100,000 from that property, and it costs us $500 per month. We take that $100,000 and we buy a property for $500,000. The bank will allow us, assuming we qualify, to borrow another $400 on that property, which means we're 100% financing a rental. And if you do it right, at bare minimum, the rent should be covering your expenses, which is a likely occurrence, or somewhere there around, depending on your goals for investment. Three things happen. Number one, your property, okay, the property that we've looked at purchasing in the next 10 years will go up in value. Unless it burns down, it's going to go up in value. Okay. That's equity growth, right? So if it goes up by $300,000, you've gone from 500 to 800, and we've seen the property value increase. Number two happens. Well, guess what? Someone's paying off a mortgage, and you're likely paying principal and interest payments. So in 10 years, you could be paying off 100,000, 200,000, depending on your loan. Let's say $200,000. So we've earned 300 plus 200, so that's $500,000. Okay, and in addition to that, that $500 a month that you're paying on your own mortgage, your primary loan, that's being paid off too, and it's actually reducing the overall cost because it's interest deduction. So essentially, your home, your asset, is going to buy something that, in this case, in 10 years, is going to earn you no less than $500,000 if you do it right. In fact, it probably could do a lot better than that. But if we do it right, it could do so. And if you continue to hold that asset, again, and you restructure your loan, and this is where we get a little bit deeper here, but if you continue to hold this asset and restructure your loan, you could start to see the return on cash flow. Now you could be earning $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month in rent, right? And that's money in your pocket that you earn that you can spend now, that you don't have to stress about, right? So if we think about it, we have $1 million asset that's doing nothing for us, or we have something that can serve and in this case, give this one example, give us $500,000 in the next 10 years, plus an estimated rental income of, let's call it $1,000 or $2,000 every single month. And that's being very conservative. Very conservative. I've got clients that we helped to buy rental properties 5 years ago that are doing substantially better than that today, in a better position. And they don't have to worry about the mortgage at all because now it's all paid off and they own multiple properties.
I think that's a great point, because, when we look at that, though, we do have to, of course, qualify that and say that there is risk in everything. So when people are considering any kind of leverage like that, this is leverage for something that traditionally has done quite well for us, but we have to understand that there is risk. I think the common saying is 5 years ago was always a good time to buy real estate. So on that basis, if you buy real estate and it kind of takes a dip, it'll probably come back. And in the meantime, you're generating cash flow, which is covering your mortgage payments, and you got a tax deduction, which reduces your income tax on that rental flow. So things can work out quite well, but people do have to make a decision. Do I have any tolerance for risk? For those that don't have zero tolerance for risk, there's no shame in that. You just have to say, I'm a saver. Like, I'm a saver, I'm not an investor. For those that have some tolerance for risk, then they have to decide, how can real estate fit into that equation? And knowing that, then we've got a partner that can help us on the debt side. So I really appreciate that insight that you have.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I couldn't agree anymore. Investing in real estate is, for someone who's I don't want to use the word timid, but perhaps nervous. You should get educated, understand the history, work with someone who does this for a living, both on the real estate side, the lending side, the financial side, all of these items. But I mean, historically speaking, the risk is insane to say this, but if you do it right, the risk is relatively low historically when it comes to real estate. If you do it right? And I mean, I guess the risk of having money just sit there and doing nothing is much greater than the risk of a tenant perhaps causing a mess in your property a couple of times, right? I've had it happen multiple times. Properties have gone up in value, down in value. Tenants have moved out. They put holes in walls. But I'll tell you right now, those properties, if I had sold those properties off 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be $1 million short in my net worth today. And so what can you deal with? What are you comfortable with, right?
Yeah, we've got a term for that, right, Matt?
What's your favorite term?
For taking zero risk is risky in itself. It's called going broke safely, right?
Yeah.
That can be a huge risk, especially in inflationary times like these, right? That can be really dangerous to your wealth.
One thing I do appreciate, Alex, is at no point did you mention timing the real estate market and looking for the long term, always looking towards the long term, because we know with this, with people timing the stock market, how bad it goes every time. And I wonder what it's like with the real estate market, in that there's so much hype towards real estate right now, and it's attracting so much attention. So of course more people are buying. But then as soon as real estate goes down, from our data in the stock market, well, people are selling. So of course you always get into that trend of buying high and selling low. And I guess that would be an example of somebody doing it wrong, right?
I think you're right, but I think we have to have that conversation, an entire podcast specifically on that one note, which we can go on for a long time on.
Oh,
My
yeah.
short version is that if someone's listening to this in a timely fashion, if they're listening to this in the end of summer in 2022, we're past the high cycle. We're now moving into the low cycle. More people are fearful about the market, saying, I will wait, I will wait, I will wait. Well, guys, guess what? I'm now shopping because I'm now in the
Mhm.
market and I'm now looking, and I've already actually placed out offers in the last week or two. So when the market presents opportunities, you don't want to run away. You want to run to them, but always have that long-term mindset, because if it dips down another, another 15% or 10%, I don't really care. I'll hang on to it for another 10 years and do just fine, right? Do just
Yeah.
okay. So, but I think we got to table that for another podcast.
Yep.
Of course. Now, Alex, what's the best place for people to connect with you?
Oh boy, where can't they? You can find me on Instagram. You're gonna have a
Okay.
good laugh. Well, you can find us at Thrive Mortgage Co. on Instagram, or on my personal account, which is a mix of dogs and finance and real estate, which is the Mortgage Pug, like the dog. But specifically, if someone wants to work with us, they should go to our website, thrivemortgage.ca, fill out the form. You can check us out on YouTube, find our podcast. Perhaps I can give the link for that. We're
Yeah.
everywhere, Matt. We're everywhere. So
Perfect.
And Matt, we
We'll
can put
include some
those.
of the links.
That'd be great in the show notes.
Yep.
That'd be great.
all right,
All
Jen.
right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
Alex.
Thank you.